Some of us have had the courage to make that switch. But if you look at the younger generation today, they are not looking to please somebody else and then make that choice. They want to make that choice. So if you really look at the fact that who is setting your GPS, is it set as per your plan, as per your requirement? Believe it or not, when you do that, you have then the liberty of falling in love with all your choices and the consequences also for it. Most of us say as Heal Your Life teachers and teachers of love and transformation, it is to open arms wide and say, I'm open and receptive to all good.
Hi everyone, I welcome you to another new episode of my podcast, Worthy with Ash. And today I have a very, very special guest. She's been my mentor, my coach since I started my spiritual awakening journey. And I've had the privilege of working with her. So today I'm introducing all of you to her, and this means a lot to me because we're literally going to be sharing a lot of golden nuggets around self-love, self-worth. Trust me, the foundation that has been set in my life is because of her. So guys, enjoy it, relish each moment of it, and take all of this in, absorb it, because it's all going to change your life, quite literally. Her name is Vidisha Kaushal, the founder of Conscious Life Academy. She's a life coach of conscious living and mindfulness and a global meditation master on the app thinkrite.me, which is India's fastest growing meditation app. And I'm so excited to introduce all of you to her. So let's welcome her. Hi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Ashmita, for this wonderful introduction. And I'm really excited to be here today.
Same here. So everywhere, everyone is talking about self-love. It's become a buzzword now. And I want to ask you today, what is the true meaning of self-love, of loving yourself? Like, what's the real meaning of it?
I'm so glad you're asking this question, Ashmita, because I think this is a word that is so misunderstood in today's world. And yet it is so talked about. Every second person is talking about self-love. But do we really understand? When we use the word self-love, let's break it up. It's about loving the self. Which self are we talking about? So if we are going to talk about the self as the body, then you've got a whole lot of people Instagramming about going to a spa, doing a manicure, pedicure. Depending on the way you're looking, you deserve the love or not. Now that is a very narrow, very superficial definition of self-love. In fact, it has nothing to do with self-love. It's just the opposite. That if you're looking good on a particular day, or if you've taken care of your body, then that is self-love. Yes, that can be a form of self-love, but not by itself. When we talk about the self, what self are we talking about? Are we talking about this body? Are we talking about the mind? Or are we really talking about the true self, which is the source flowing through you and me? The same source from which galaxies are made. We don't stand and say, oh, this galaxy is beautiful, this one is not nice, this is wrong with the galaxy. We accept nature in all its formats. We look at a tree and we say it's beautiful. We even look at a tree which has been cut and formed into a table and we say, what beautiful wood. So the same source flows through us also. And if we can begin to love ourselves as a representation of that source, then we are talking about self-love.
Well, recently I got a very interesting comment on one of my reels where I had spoken about how God is within each one of us. We are a part of that one source. And someone commented saying, we cannot be gods because we eat meat, we watch porn, we abuse, and we're not perfect and pure. So when you talk about the source flowing through us, it's beautiful. But isn't it true that there are parts of us which are not pure? So while that comment, I understood which space it was coming from, but it also generated this curiosity while you were just talking to me, that do we also love those parts of ourselves that are not perfect, and how? How do we love them?
So I think there are two parts to really your question. One is, how do we even recognize source when we are in the vibration of watching porn, drinking and doing things which is perceived as low vibrational frequencies, right? So if we are talking about that, I have a very interesting example to give, and I love giving this example. आप आटा गूंथते हो, right? You need the dough. And out of that atta, you will make a chapati, or you can make a paratha, or you can make a puri as you want to. Now that is beautiful and you enjoy it, you relish it. But what if you leave this atta out for 6 days, 10 days? Can you eat it?
No, I think it will go bad.
It will go bad. It'll go bad in about 2 days, right? So it'll go bad. It'll start stinking, rotting. It can even be toxic if we consume it. We can actually suffer from food poisoning if we consume it. Now, that horrible looking atta, is it still made of wheat? Yes, it is. It's just a contaminated form of that atta, right? But it remains coming from that source. So similarly, we may have got various things happening, various interferences happening, various lowering of frequencies happening, but the energy is the same. It's still the source energy. Yeah. And then your second question is, how do we love ourselves despite those so-called contaminations or those modifications of the energy? So when you look at a little child, and I'm sure when you were in school, you must have had areas which were not so developed. And I'm sure you had some teacher who was very khurus in your school, right?
Yeah.
Who was dreaded and who was that frustrated person who would just take out her frustration or his frustration on the children. Did you learn well from that teacher?
Not at all.
Did you improve in that subject consistently?
I became worse.
And did you enjoy that learning process?
Not at all.
Obviously not. Now, transformation actually comes when you are loved and accepted. I'm sure you had a wonderful teacher also in school, did you?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you learnt very well from that teacher.
I did.
And you enjoyed the process.
I was excited, yeah.
Yes. And that kind of a change holds true for consistent amount of time. Now that is true transformation. So by criticizing those parts of us, which we consider as impure, by criticizing, by denying, by running away, by shaming ourselves, we are not going to achieve any transformation. So let's not be like that teacher who bullied us. Let's be like the teacher who encouraged us, who was there to hold space for us as we underwent the natural journey of evolving and blossoming.
Wow. I think that really explains us what self-love is. I want to ask you that you've been on this journey of self-love for quite some time now. How has it impacted your life, and how does it change anyone else's life as we begin to love ourselves more?
For that, you just have to look at somebody who is in love. Have you seen anybody in love?
Yeah.
In your life, you must have seen. Have you noticed that those people keep smiling for no reason? Sometimes they're acting extra nice to people. They're very giving. They are not angry all the time, right? If they are in love, not if they are in a toxic relationship. Now, when they are in love, they truly enjoy and radiate that vibration. It's a very similar thing with self-love. Self-love is pretty much like being in a loving, caring, nurturing relationship with another person. So if you want to understand self-love, you just have to look towards a wonderful co-creating relationship between two people. So what happens then is that because you're so filled with love, right? So when you are radiating that energy, it pours on to those around you. A happy person, a fulfilled person is always radiating that energy. But a frustrated person, an angry person, somebody who's unfulfilled, is constantly radiating that victim energy. So the same holds true for when we love ourselves. We radiate love. We radiate acceptance. If you can accept yourself, truly accept yourself, then you can accept others also. If you can love yourself, you can actually love others also.
I think one word that you mentioned here was very interesting, was the word victim. Because I feel I have been in this space of victimhood for quite some time, or I had been in this space of victimhood for quite some time, and it took me a long time to recognize that I am in this deep victimhood where I feel that whenever something wouldn't go my way, I would start feeling that the universe is against me, or it's not working as fast as I want it to be, or maybe I made a mistake, that's why the universe is not responding to me the way it should have, or not rewarding me. So I came into this space of really seeing the universe as a place where if I am at fault, then I will not receive good. Like if I'm not being perfect, I'm not doing everything great, well, then I probably won't receive the rewards or the good experiences. And I, of course, realized that that was deep victimhood mentality. And I also want to bring forth this incident that happened where once, so what would happen is that I would always come to you with a sense of victimhood, right? Always crying, not happy about the way life is moving forward. And there were so many times where you held that space for me, you helped me validate my emotions. But then there was this one time where you really questioned that. And you were like, why haven't you been able to get over it? And why haven't you been able to move forward yet? And that was a question when you put on me, I was really taken aback because I felt that I'm not validated anymore. And I felt like this is somehow not sustaining that victimhood that I basically came in that space to continue experiencing. So while that was triggering, it also brought in a transformation for me because I suddenly realized that, oh, I am no longer allowed to be a victim here. Like the validation part is done, but now it's time to up level and really take responsibility and move beyond. So since that time to now, I have been able to completely like heal my anxiety. I have been able to up level in my life so much. Like I'm really grateful that you knew the exact time when to, help me or challenge me to up level. So I want to ask you that a lot of people that I meet, a lot of my clients as well, they move through zones of victimhood where they feel that if they are not being perfect, the universe is not going to reward them with good experiences. How to recognize that you're being a victim and and when to move beyond it.
Very interesting. And I'm glad you've quoted your own example because we can really pick that up. So one part is how to recognize that you're in a victim consciousness. Let's say I don't know about self-worth. I don't know about self-love. I'm somebody who grew up believing that I have to earn love. I'm somebody who grew up believing that if you tick certain boxes, then you deserve to be loved. And I may have picked up this message without anybody even saying it. Maybe nobody said it to me, but maybe the way my parents treated themselves taught me an example of how to treat myself. Or maybe this was conveyed in the house or in the school or wherever in childhood it was. Because the seeds are truly sown there, somewhere in the environment, wherever it is.
I feel it was my school where I always felt ignored because I wasn't a certain way. So I strived to be that definition of the favorite girl.
Yes.
And I never could.
So often for many people it is school, for others it could be home, for others it could be the way our parent is treating themselves. It could even be the way you want to earn the love of your parents. Maybe you got parents who are, and this could be for people who are listening, maybe one sibling is getting more love. Maybe the parents themselves are very harsh on themselves, right? So your belief is then that the only way to earn love or to be loved or to get respect is by literally whipping yourself into a certain level of perfection. Now, if that's what you grew up with, then you don't know any better. And let's say you go through your own journey in healing. At some point in time, you meet somebody, you come across the resources. Somehow when you're ready, it appears. And that's when you start the journey of transformation. Very often what can happen to people along this journey of transformation is that you find a mentor, you find a teacher who seems to be a resonant match for you, for your learning journey. So which works out wonderfully. And you begin to feel safe, you begin to open up, the trauma starts coming out, and you begin your journey of healing. Pretty much like a child who wants to learn to cycle, and they have the security of the training wheels, right? So they know they're safe, they know they can get a grasp of all the wheels and everything else, all the parts of the cycle, all the skill involved in cycling, and they've got the training wheels with them. Now, there's a saying to the effect of a true master will let go when you're ready, right? Because otherwise, a teacher or mentor can become a huge source of dependency also and can become an enabler of victimhood, right? So let's say You felt like a victim, and there's nothing wrong with that. We all do at some point in time. And then you undergo your journey of feeling safe, feeling validated, all of it coming out. Now, can we really continue to do that forever? No. And we can continue to do that forever because we are living human beings and we continue to hold space for us. But can we actually take some steps to change that reality? Or should we just remain at the stage of venting, getting held in a safe space, feeling like a victim, taking it out? Now, really, the aim of any good teaching or transformation is not to get you stuck in the victim story. So while it is safe for you to share that, but there will come a time when you're ready for the training wheels to be taken off. And when you're ready for the training wheels to be taken off, a good teacher or a good mentor will have the wisdom to do that and to remove the dependency, even if it is on them, even if it means removing that safe space and encouraging you to take action, encouraging you to utilize the tools that you've already probably picked up. So that's how this journey can happen. And that's how you can step out of victimhood. The other thing is when you really begin to love yourself, you feel like doing something. You feel like doing things, just like you feel like doing things for someone you're in love with. You feel like buying flowers, you feel like writing a letter. So what are all these? You take some action, you express something, you are having a conversation. Now, when all that starts happening within a person, automatically the life around you starts getting better.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so firstly, I want to also acknowledge that that time was so important for me, when you held space for me and, you didn't enable me anymore to move deep into victimhood. Instead, you challenged me. And because of which today, when I work with my clients, I also know that time when the time comes to not keep them, in a state of dependency, but to make them more independent and let them go on their own journey. So I think some fabulous lessons on mentorship here, and maybe we can dive deeper on it, sometime soon, on how to evolve as a good mentor. And if you guys want something like that, do comment below. If you guys want us to talk more about, especially if you're a coach or a mentor already. So yeah, let us know. Apart from that, I want to talk about, you mentioned the aspect of victimhood, where you spoke about understanding, when you're in a state of victimhood and then moving to a space of self-love. I want to get a little bit deeper into it. I want to understand from you, what are the signs where we understand that we're living a life in deep victimhood? What are some of those signs?
Plenty of signs, actually, if you're aware. One, for example, is your view about yourself and your view about the world. So if you believe that I'm good for nothing, मेरे साथ ऐसा ही होता है, I don't really have luck. And your belief about the world is that the world is out to get me. दुनिया सारी यहाँ पे अपना स्वार्थ लेकर बैठी, everybody selfish, everybody wants to just gain something out of me. There is a hidden agenda that everyone has. This kind of a thought process is a huge indicator that we are seeped in victimhood. The other indicator could be always feeling helpless, not being able to voice ourselves, not being able to express ourselves. Let's say somebody's got certain emotions, got certain thoughts that they want to or need to convey to a loved one, but they're unable to do it. Okay, there is a child who's unable to convey it to the parents, that the parents are hurting him or her, or are stepping over certain boundaries, not allowing him or her to make the decisions. Now that child feels helpless. That helplessness is a clear sign of victimhood. Victimhood can also be when we underestimate our own ability to handle a situation. So a lot of women, for example, won't even attempt something, saying, "Ye to mere bas ka nahi hai, and this is something my husband will take care of." Typical example is finances. I still don't know too many women who are handling their own investments, their own income tax returns, despite them being graduates and postgraduates in commerce and banking and whatnot. So that's another indicator where we underestimate our ability based on some limiting belief. My gender can't handle it. My age can't handle it. I'm too young to become a podcaster. I'm too old to become a teacher of something new and happening. So all these limiting beliefs, when we hold on to it, they can also reflect as victimhood. There are so many ways of really finding out, but a very simple way is watch your self-talk. What are the thoughts that you're thinking, whether they are about the world or about yourself or about your loved ones? And when you monitor those thoughts, you'll get to know whether you're in victimhood or not. If those thoughts are all about that is how it is, that is how the way of the world is, that is how my family is, I can't change anything. If those thoughts are about I'm such an idiot, I always mess this up, I'm 100% going to trip, these are all indications that somewhere we have thought of ourselves as a victim and we are holding on to that identity.
And also one more thing is where you want to be perfect, right? That is, I want to also bring in the topic of perfectionism, wherein, like you said, I was scoring myself. If I'm not this, then I don't deserve this from the universe. If I'm not doing this, I'm not showing up this way, I'm not earning this much, then I don't deserve this. So a lot of the scoreboarding was happening for me, and I feel a lot of people who go through this space of perfectionism, they also carry this deep-rooted victimhood and this deep-rooted, I feel, abandonment, or this feeling of not being enough no matter what they do. What do you feel about that?
I agree that they carry it. And if you're wondering where the roots of this go, you don't suddenly wake up doubting yourself one fine day. You don't suddenly wake up second-guessing yourself constantly and developing a victim story. This is something that literally happens how a seed sprouts. So the seeds of it are pretty much sown much in our past, often in our childhood. So let's say you had a very critical teacher or a parent who was a perfectionist, or somebody expected perfectionism out of you. Somebody expected you to be a good girl or a good boy. I hear that term less these days because people are very scared and aware, and this has been done to death. So, Ashmita, when we were growing up, I'm much older than you, but I'm sure even up till your time, a very common way of appreciating children was by calling them a good girl or a good boy. Today, of course, people are very wary of saying that also because social media has sort of blown that up a lot. But really saying good girl or good boy is laying the foundation of being somebody who ticks boxes constantly. So if I get appreciated as a child for being a good girl, what is going to be the message in my mind? That when will I get love and appreciation? When I'm being a good girl. When I'm being compliant, when I'm ticking the boxes. Without that, I feel I will not get the love and appreciation that I want. So when we do this, we lay the foundation of somebody, some human being, to start ignoring their own needs. It doesn't matter what emotions I'm experiencing. It doesn't matter if I'm having a nasty day and I need to take out that excess energy which is running as emotions within me. I am so busy ticking boxes because I need and crave the validation of others. I've grown up then with my self-worth based on the validation, appreciation, and acknowledgement of others. I don't know what it is like to self-validate, to feel that I know what I want, I know what I'm feeling. Instead, we say, I shouldn't feel angry. Angry children are not appreciated by anybody. Yet anger is such a human emotion. So self-love is all about stepping away from all of that and being true to what is happening, being present to it, and not waiting for the validation of others. You become your own greatest source of appreciation, validation, and even teaching. You constantly learn. You constantly learn to also look at the so-called mistakes as a learning opportunity. And that's what self-love can do for somebody whose self-worth is really not so high right from childhood.
Amazing. And that is something that, that has been my core wound as well, and which is why I resonate with you very deeply on that, because I've been working on self-validating myself, not seeking validation from outside. And one more thing that comes in here is performance. Always wanting to perform to get that validation. And a lot of working women, if I can say, they seek validation based on their performance. So every time they almost walk on eggshells when it comes to work. Like I work with a lot of women, and I see them walking on eggshells, making sure that they don't make a mistake, making sure that they are perfect and they are liked by everyone, and maintaining that persona that you are, just perfect at everything. Especially women nowadays, we want to really shine in every area of our lives. And that's where also the saying comes in, which says that women can have it all. And I feel somewhere in this whole quote of women can have it all, I am sensing that it's also really putting us in a space where we aspire to have it all. And because of which we're constantly striving for it, and we feel that we don't, and it's not enough. And we're not enough because of that. So what do you feel about this whole notion of women can have it all? And it being like a space where all of us are striving to be just perfect at everything.
So I'm going to say something controversial here and say that women can have it all. And any human being can have it all. But what is that all? Who defines that all? If that all is going to be defined by the checklist that somebody had or society has, then any human being, man or woman, we are going nowhere with that journey. And you're never going to be fulfilled, and you're always going to fall short because these standards have been set by somebody else. Are these the things that make you happy? So if I say I can have it all, and if my concept of all is me being true to myself, me unfolding in my greatest potential, if that is my all, I can have it. Because we are wholesome beings. We are not just one part. We don't just eat all day. We don't just sleep all day. We don't just work all day. We don't just be with friends all day. We are not just present with our spouse or partner all day long. Imagine so many aspects are intertwined, interlinked so beautifully in every human being on a day-to-day basis. Not even living some kind of a special life, but any average life, it consists of so many different components. And that happens by itself, organically. But then you're not holding yourself responsible for some unusual standards, impossible standards set up by people who themselves don't have it together. Very often when you look at the people who are setting these standards, you'll notice a very deep unhappiness within them. And there's almost the feeling of, mujhe nahi mila, tumhe kaise mil jayega. So they may be projecting a lot of their victimhood onto you by laying down those standards. And this can be often done by very loving people in our lives. Sometimes people are so scared that they are setting up a framework for you to follow. Often parents do that. Partners do that to each other. You're so scared that your loved one may get hurt or may fail at something. So let's say I want to start a business. What is going to be the response of the family most of the times?
They probably would question you and doubt you in the first go.
Yeah. And God forbid, if my family is from a different background, let's say my father was salaried or my mother was working in a job, then they are going to project that whole thing. There is no neutral ground really in most cases, unless somebody is very mindful. Now, for a mindful and conscious parent or an individual, they're going to say, okay, my experience was different. Her experience could be different. So then they are not going to question my choice. Instead, they're going to look at ways to support my choice, ways to even caution me, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the energy that they are coming with is not one of negating, not one of waiting for me to fail. You know that famous dialogue when they show somebody leaving the house and they say, "Do din mein aate dal ka bhav pata chal jayega." So we are literally sometimes waiting for the child to get a wake-up call and come down to reality, which may be true in certain very exceptional cases. But in most of the times, when we're talking about career choices, when we're talking about learning about finances, following something that I'm truly passionate about. Family and loved ones, and even friends sometimes, may not be our most encouraging folks. Sometimes that tribe is somewhere else because they are so attached to us. Attachment can sometimes come in the way of love.
And that is so true. A lot of people that I know who want to start something of their own, who want to do something different in their lives, the first obstacle they face is they don't get the approval of their immediate family members, the people that they love. And a lot of them get stuck in that space for years, where they won't take that one step forward towards their dreams because this person's not approving, or because what will Bhua say, or what will Masi think of me when I show up on, let's say, social media, or, what will my partner think of me? So a lot of, or let's say it's not logical enough what I'm doing. So a lot of those limiting beliefs, I would say, comes in, and people just get stuck in that whole rut. So in that space, when you've not found a tribe yet who validates you, and your immediate family invalidates you almost every day and makes you feel that you're not enough, how do we come back and seek that validation within?
Yeah, I think it all begins with making a choice. Who are you going to honor? Whose needs are you going to meet? Are you going to meet your parents' need by planning your future? And I'm not talking about future which is interlinked with them. Let's say you need to plan a living arrangement and you need to take care of your parents. That bit is separate. But I'm saying my career choice, for example, or my choice of a partner, or my choice of being on social media, right? If I'm going to think about the needs of someone else, what does this have to do with anybody else's needs? How does my being on social media fulfill, or my not being on social media fulfill the needs of anyone else? Is this real even? We are caught in something which is just a concept, and someone has laid down those points for us. So it all begins with asking yourself, do you really matter? Do your needs matter? Are you willing to give a chance to yourself?
But what if you fail?
What if? Nahi, I promise you, you will fail. Failure is part of the journey. If today I want to learn how to crochet something, I'm first going to fail. And that's critical. That's very, very important. I can't skip that. So one is, of course, the whole concept of learning is so skewed. Nobody understands that failure is one of the first steps, really. And so at the first sign of failure, we're willing to dump it. Because the voice in our head is not even our own voice. It is the voice that we've been listening to from society or from somebody who is influential. And in that case, I'm not in touch with my own GPS. So I don't know where I'm going. Somebody else has set my maps and I'm traveling there. How is this going to make me happy? How am I going to sustain it? So you have in my generation, and I'm an example of that, of people who made a switch in careers in their 30s. And these were the ones who had the courage to make the choice and say, okay, I've done something and it is no longer fulfilling my highest calling. And some of us have had the courage to make that switch. But if you look at the younger generation today, they are not looking to please somebody else and then make that choice. They want to make that choice. So if you really look at the fact that who is setting your GPS, is it set as per your plan, as per your requirement? Believe it or not, when you do that, you have then the liberty of falling in love with all your choices and the consequences also for it. Because then there is no right or wrong choice. You've decided to become a podcaster, right? Can that be called a right or a wrong choice? Not really. You're expressing a part of yourself. There is an inner calling and you're doing it wonderfully. You may decide a year later to step into a slightly different space. That doesn't make this choice wrong. That's just you blossoming multi-layered, layer by layer. And then you own your choices. So when you make a mistake, you say, hey, wonderful, I've learned something new today. I learned something about myself, or I learned something about the world, or I learned something about this technique. You are considering it a part of the process. For example, when in a company they launch a learning plan, they already assume that there is a learning curve. So they give that liberty to everybody to go through a learning curve, which means I may be very slow initially. I may pick up momentum. I may make mistakes. Therefore, when you look at even a compliance test, it never requires you to do 100%. It always says, okay, if you've got a score of about 90%, you got most of it right, which means the scope of 10% error is inbuilt. But why do we forget this when it comes to ourselves? When it is true for such huge corporations and their learning plans, why is it not true for ourselves? Because here we see things through the lens of others. There is somebody else setting that GPS. So it's simple answer will be start setting your own GPS. And I promise you, the people who are scared for you or are critical of you or are overprotective of you, when you go through this journey and when you shine bright and when all the magic comes into play, they're going to be the first ones celebrating with you. And they will often reflect and say, you know what, you made it work. So trust yourself, trust your GPS and go for it.
Yeah, I think that is so amazing and beautiful. And this is for all the people who are sort of struggling with making that choice, taking that leap towards their dreams, towards whatever it is that they want to do that creatively fulfills them. I feel this is one thing they all need to remember, that failure is a part of the journey. So instead of avoiding it or trying to avoid it and not doing anything at all, it's better to go into it, fail, learn from it, get better. Because what happens with perfectionism is people want to dive in and they expect that it's going to give them some miraculous result. And when it doesn't give them, they go back heartbroken. And then, it takes them 2x effort to go back again and do that. So I feel somewhere we also need to understand that we have a learning curve, which means we'll go in, we'll fail, we'll learn, and then we'll get better, and then we'll do the same thing again. But I feel that a lot of them have this strict parent figure or an authority figure standing on top of their head, like that's the visualization I'm getting, because of which they are not able to take that one step, because they're constantly wondering, what will my partner say?
Yeah.
Because they might have someone who judges them, for every step they take, or what will my parents say if I go ahead and take that step? So I also want to ask you, like when you mentioned that, finding that inner GPS system, that is so essential. But in times when you have no validation from anyone around you and the tribe hasn't come in, like I said, we do tap into that inner GPS. But what's that first step of getting that internal validation? Like what's the first step of tapping into that inner GPS? Where do we start from?
When I go back to the definition of self-love, who is the true self? And when the true self is source, your GPS is set. You just have to tune in. So when you're tuned in, you then begin to, it has to happen. These are the laws of life. You will magnetize people who will gravitate because they are vibrating at the same frequency. Now let's say you are tuned into the source, whether it is because you're meditating every day. So what are you doing in a meditation? You're in a date with the source. You're dating the source, literally. And when you do that, you're going to be more and more connected to it. So you start vibrating. You start, through the principle of resonance, your own vibrational frequency shifts. It's more a match for the source. That is why you feel during meditation that, okay, I felt very peaceful. I felt very calm. I felt like my natural self. There were no filters. There was no pretense. There was nobody's standards to meet. Now, I know some people who have standards to meet in meditation also. So they ruin the experience for themselves by holding themselves up to certain standards of meditation. मुझे इतनी देर बैठना है, or I should have no thought in my mind. I just want to take this opportunity to clarify, if even in meditation you've got a checklist, really that's not the right path. Again, your GPS has been set by somebody else, by some book that you read or some sadhu, sant, master that you are measuring yourselves against. So that's again the path of unloving yourself. Those are the ways in which we unlove ourselves. Let's not go down that path. Instead, when you set your own GPS, you are willing to embrace the present moment the way it comes. Let's see how it flows. So today's meditation could be very different from yesterday's meditation. There is no such thing that I've qualified or I've got certified by the universe or something. I may need to process something on a particular day. So I may have a very intense meditation. And on another day, I could just be on a date with the divine. And I could just have a sense of peace, calm, and being myself and being my most authentic self. Now, if I'm doing that, I'm spending more and more time with my true self. That is when I begin to listen to the voice. That is when I can even begin to listen. And that is when I know how to set my GPS and how to travel my journey. I also know how to encourage myself then. Because when you're in a relationship with somebody, what do? Do you discourage them at the first sign of so-called failure? Again, I also feel this word failure is it's a label. If you really want to look at anything, Ashmita, there are two things I would ask anybody to look at. If you want to go back to basics, look at nature and look at children. These are the two short ways to simplify your answers and uncomplicate all the knowledge that we have acquired, all the overwhelm of different concepts that we have acquired. You want to simplify that? Go back to looking at nature. Go back to looking at a little baby. Now, when a baby tries to walk, do we call it a failure? Does the baby label it a failure when they fall?
No, absolutely not.
And is falling an essential part of the journey to learn how to walk?
Absolutely.
We don't have criticism for it. We don't have any corrupted thoughts about it. We are crystal clear, and the baby is crystal clear. Now, let's say the baby grew up in an environment where he or she was penalized every time they fell. What would happen to this child? They would not be capable of walking, and walking would trigger fear in them. The whole thing grows so toxic so fast. Something perfectly natural and normal can turn into misery and trauma for a person. And that's what we do to ourselves when we label things and when we hold ourselves up against standards. When a baby learns to talk, does the baby rattle off an essay straight away? No. The baby babbles sounds and we celebrate each sound and we clap and we encourage the child. That's exactly what we got to do with ourselves. So if you were to use a term called reparenting, that's a wonderful way to begin your journey of self-acceptance. No matter, so again, another thing that's happening is we're talking about what happened in childhood. And the aim of that is not to shift the responsibility onto some past that cannot be changed.
Yeah.
So it would be very easy to say, okay, my parents didn't have it together, so I'm so messed up and I'm a victim. Now here, when we take this kind of a stance, the danger is that there is no scope to change your destiny. There is no scope to change your reality. But when we say, okay, this may have happened, and now I take the responsibility of my own needs getting fulfilled. So if I needed validation, can I give it to myself? If I needed appreciation, can I appreciate that source that flows through me? So when we begin to do that, that is when love really blossoms. And again, I always say this, like we say for others, love is a verb, not just a noun. So it needs to translate into daily life. It needs to translate into, am I honoring my need for more water? Am I honoring my need to get enough sleep? Am I honoring my need to spend time with myself instead of scrolling reels because I can't bear to be with myself? These are some of the questions we need to ask ourselves.
How important is it to spend time with yourself? And do we do that on a daily basis? And if we do that, then what's the process of spending time with yourself? Like, what is the intention or the process, or exactly how does it look like?
Well, it is essential because if there is no self, there is no self-development, self-love, self-worth. These are just words then. And these are just terms that the commercial world will exploit to get to you. Right? So you use so-and-so salon and then you are lovable or you're worth it. Right? Or you use this brand and then you're worth it. Or you go to this spa and treat yourself and then you're worth it. So somebody else is going to really be minting money out of your own insecurity and your own need to not be with yourself. And if anything is encouraging us to be with ourselves, that is the true sign of some kind of a real development, real journey of self-love. So how can you be with yourself? See, one is, of course, that you start your day with yourself. Take out time, even if it is 15 minutes. And if you can, take out about an hour. So the question is, how do we get started on this journey really? You begin by just taking out a little bit of time for yourself during the morning. That can be a wonderful way, even if it's about 15 minutes. Or if you can take about an hour, that would be ideal. If that means sleeping on time, waking up a little earlier, then it's worth the effort. And what you do in this 1 hour or these 15 minutes is that you spend some time filling yourself up with wonderful energy. Before you start spending that energy on the world and on your loved ones, you first fill yourself up with energy. Just like you charge your mobiles every morning. So this is like a charge. You could do meditation during this time. You could do a 5-minute meditation. You could listen to some calming music. You can be out in nature and just take a walk and do your affirmations during this time. Or you can simply sit in silence. Maybe feel the gratitude for the blessings that you have. Now, what this does is it connects you to the most wonderful and nurturing part of yourself. It's a wonderful way to build that togetherness with yourself. And then comes the rest of the day. One mistake that everybody makes is you do affirmations in the morning. You sort of do some practice, chanting, some kind of a practice that you follow. But we don't think about the rest of the day. So if during the rest of the day, you are being the critic to yourself, you are thinking that by criticizing yourself, you're going to create some kind of a positive change, then we are mistaken. So who we are during the rest of the day is equally important. What you can do is you can actually take every opportunity during the day to have a conversation with yourself, to give yourself a message of love and encouragement. A very simple thing is every time you go to the loo, look at the mirror and say to yourself, I love you. I truly, truly love you. Every time you make a mistake, go and give yourself a lot of love. Because when a child makes a mistake and when they're terrified, we console them. We give them a lot of love. So apply the same principle to yourself. Maybe stand in front of the mirror and say, I know you messed up, but this is all right. We'll solve it. So that we language, when it starts coming, that's when the real magic of self-love happens.
Amazing. I want to ask you, what if the self-love is not coming in naturally, or that loving voice is not coming in naturally? What's happening is you're angry at yourself for making a mistake, or you're genuinely not happy with the way you are, or with the way you are moving through the day. Then where do we get that source of love from? Because then it starts to feel fake. Just saying that I love you. So how do we move from that space to really feeling that love for yourself?
I go back to the example of me learning to crochet, right? When I begin to crochet, do I say that I'm being fake and fraud? Because I don't know yet how to crochet, or the result is not visible to me. And because I don't even believe yet that I can crochet. But I understand that the first step is me learning to make those stitches. So the first thing that I do is I learn that making these stitches is very important. And that doesn't make me an expert. But I give myself the license for that. The same thing is applicable for your inner practices, your self-love practices. Give yourself the breathing space to learn. Yes, it won't feel true, otherwise you won't be doing it. For example, when does a person do affirmations? When they're trying to shift a belief system that they've had. You don't sit and affirm, there is oxygen in the air, there is oxygen in water. All that you already know for sure. You don't need to affirm it. Affirmations, for example, are a tool to sow some new seeds, which you don't believe yet. The sprout hasn't happened yet. You don't see the result in your belief system. But you know that if you take care of the seed and if you water it and you give it enough sun, it is going to blossom. It's the same thing with all the inner practices. So this whole language of labeling ourselves fraud or fake or judging it needs to stop. So when you catch yourself doing that, tell yourself, hold on, sweetheart. There's no need to judge. Yes, the result is not visible to you, but we're simply nurturing the seed. And if you have that self-conversation with yourself and you encourage yourself, say to yourself, you're doing wonderfully. I love how much you learned. I love what this journey has brought you. Then you will find the energy to carry on. Because whether you give up or not, this is the process. You may choose to give up at the first sign of falling apart. You may choose to give up for XYZ reasons, but the process remains the same.
Yeah.
People who didn't give up, the only thing different is they didn't give up. The process was the same for them also.
Yeah. I feel this process of loving yourself is not just, just a small change in your life. It brings in a huge transformation. Like having, learned from Louise Hay, we've heard of people healing their diseases, their cancer, and so much more just by feeling that love for yourself. So can you just throw some light on the power of doing this, the power of choosing to love yourself every day a little bit more? How can it really transform your life from healing diseases to attracting, let's say, the right life partner, the right kind of income stream? Tell us a little bit about that.
So for that, I'll have to ask you a question. What is the power of the source?
It's infinite.
So when your definition or your understanding of self-love is that of activating that source within you by loving it and appreciating it, then everything the universe has is possible for you. You can play with the energy of the source and manifest whatever you want to. But you can't tune into that energy if you are in a self-critical space. You're not a match for it then. And if you're not matching it, you can't manifest from it. So loving yourself starts the process of us becoming a vibrational match to the source. Us letting go of all the contamination. So it begins by the not so pretty process of releasing all that which is not loving. So often people think the journey of self-love begins with all the lovely things in the world. And that's not always true. Parts of the journey may not be so pretty. For example, you said, I may feel very angry and critical of myself. Now, if I'm going to suppress those feelings and try and do affirmations, that is not going to serve the purpose. So can I learn healthy ways of releasing that energy? If somebody has food poisoning, you don't start serving them the best 8-course meal in the world. You let them vomit it out. But they don't vomit on somebody. They don't vomit on themselves. They're able to release it in a healthy way. The same thing stands true for us. If we learn how to release these emotions, channelize them in healthy ways, then the journey of self-love begins. And that is where we learn how to step by step handhold ourselves through the journey.
Wow, that is so important. Hand-holding yourself through each step of the way and not leaving your side. And that also brings me to the question of abandonment. I feel a lot of us abandon ourselves when we go through a tough emotion, a tough situation. We want to escape it because it feels too difficult to feel it all. How to hold space for ourselves during that time when a lot of emotions are coming up.
Yeah. It's the same as having a relationship with somebody. Let's say at the first sign of trouble, if you get rid of somebody, what does that reflect about the relationship?
It's not strong enough.
It's not strong. It was not authentic. You wanted the nice side of the person, but you didn't want the complicated side of the person. You wanted all the love and all the respect and you wanted all the attention, but you don't want to be there when they are experiencing some nasty emotions. You don't want to be supporting them when they're going through a tricky time in life. We're doing the same thing to ourselves. When there is a tricky time and we dump ourselves, that's literally what we are doing. So it's time to wake up and it's time to start treating yourself the way you would treat a loved one.
So when you spoke about self-worth, I also want to bring in something about mothers. I see a lot of mothers, and I work with a lot of young mothers especially, and I see them feeling very burnt out or feeling very guilty or unworthy. One is that they find it hard to manage everything. So there is a lack of work-life balance because these are now young mothers who started working. We've seen most mothers, of let's say my generation, they had just started working. And of the previous generation, we did not have, mothers working and going out and bringing home the money. But now more and more young mothers are also, getting into the workforce. But what I see in them is that there is this sense of, number one, unworthiness, that they are not able to handle it all, not enoughness. I feel that they are not able to take care of everything together because now they are expected to take care of the house, they're expected to take care of the work part, they're expected to be best in all the spectrums of, in all the areas of their lives. And somewhere that really makes them feel unworthy and also stuck in their lives where they are not connected, like you said, to their own inner GPS. So they are feeling that whatever it is that they're doing, it's not enough. What do you have to say about that?
I think this is a deeper problem, and I just want to make one point here, Ashmita. When we're talking about women working, we're talking about women going out and working, right? Women have always been working, sometimes far more than what we are working today, far more intensely. My grandmother, for example, was a child bride and worked her way through her puberty, just worked, did a lot of work. So that was a different kind of work. When you're talking about working outside the house and really bringing in money as a currency of exchange, one, I think as a society, we were not prepared for this change. So I'm all for any individual making the choices that they need to make, man, woman, child, whoever they are. However, the fact is that, and predominantly in Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, we weren't really ready for one person to step out and start working. Because then what's the solution? Who stays with the child? Who takes care of the household work? We hadn't really organized it. It wasn't as if, an organization is going through an org change and you call a meeting and you say, okay, so-and-so department takes care of this and so-and-so department takes care of this and this department is going to be out in the field. That's not what we did as families. It was quite a hodgepodge. It was quite a fight for many women to get out of the house and have the right to begin working. Or it became essential because the financial situations were such, especially in the metropolitan cities. Now what's happened is, formally or informally, in families where there is lack of communication, lack of bonding, there you will find that the change is just left to God. Ram bharose, dekhi jayegi. So when you say dekhi jayegi, who's the one who's finally going to land up doing things? The woman. It's the woman of the house. So very often I see these things on Instagram saying, don't do this, don't be so harsh on yourself, just let go of things. And there's a woman, grumpy, frumpy mom sitting there saying, if I don't do it, who the hell is going to do it? And I always laugh because that's a true question. If I have a partner and I decide to keep my home in a particular way, and I'd love to keep my home in a particular way, here I'm not talking about the GPS set by others. I'm talking about a life that I desire or my partner desires, right? We'd like to eat a certain kind of food. We'd like to live a certain way. We'd like to go out in a certain way. Now the question is, do we have enough clarity and communication happening in the family to decide that when I'm out, who takes care of so-and-so responsibility? And when you're out, who takes care of XYZ responsibility? How do we as a team, how do we proceed in solving these situations? These are not problems. These are situations, but we made them into a problem. And it cannot be resolved unless we have this kind of communication. Now, not everybody has the kind of partner who may want to take part in this discussion. So the question is then, are you able to speak up? Are you able to really evaluate how many tasks in a day am I doing? How can these be distributed? Another thing that I strongly feel about is that, especially in India, we are not yet raising children with life skills. And when I look at, for example, the Montessori method of learning and the Japanese way of education, the first thing that children learn is how to clean their environment, how to mop the floor, how to clean your desk. And some people listening to me might think, अब हम क्या झाड़ू पोछा करवाएंगे बच्चों से? आप घर के सारे टास्क लिस्ट डाउन करिए and you start preparing your children for life. Whether they are boys or girls, it doesn't matter. These are life skills. So can I train my child to lay the table? Can the children be a part of, can it be a collaborative living space? Instead of it being that old definition, obsolete definition, where somebody's suffering, somebody's resentful, somebody feels like I'm an ATM. Can we shift to a collaborative living space where we all collaborate, including the children? So one child can lay the table, another child can clear the table, somebody can, get the clothes out for drying, somebody else can do something else. And this will not only lessen the burden on one person, but it will prepare the others to face life.
Yeah.
And if you are hoping to raise your children with better values, but the man of the house is doing nothing when he gets home, then you can't hope that the children will learn from example. No matter what you lecture to those children, they're going to learn what they're watching. The girl as well as the boy, right? So that's one thing I feel needs to be incorporated into our way of life. We've grown beyond the set roles that we set. Those roles served a purpose. In my grandmother's time and my grandfather's time, my grandfather was in the army, he was serving at the borders. He couldn't be expected to come home and lay the table and take part in many things because the nature of his work was such.
Yeah.
My grandmother, on the other hand, raised her children almost single-handedly, was posted in the most godforsaken locations, knew how to shoot a gun, knew how to take care of any offenders if they came in the vicinity, and was a very empowered woman. However, can I start playing that role today? I can't. My environment is different. My aspirations are different. I've not even been raised to be that. I was raised by a father who believed in education, who believed in progression, who believed in treating me as me and not as somebody who has to mark on a checklist, and raised me with equal values as my brothers, right? So my aspiration, my life is very different. Now, I need to choose then how my home environment is. So that's as far as the social part goes. But the second part comes at, what do mothers really do to build their self-worth? Let's say they cannot change everybody else, or everybody is taking part in the home. Yet, I would strongly encourage women to take out those 15 minutes, that 1 hour for yourself. Because you are going to give and give to the world and to your home and to your family. How are you going to receive?
Yeah.
So take that time to receive, empower yourself, and take frequent breaks during the day to just center yourself. Just take a moment, breathe deeply, and ask yourself, where am I in this moment? A lot of women, when I talk to them at work, they're thinking about home. When they're home, they're thinking about their workplace. That makes us less present. So then we are not even operating at our 100% and we are depleting our energy.
Yeah.
One of the most common reasons of burnout is that process of thinking.
And I was going to come to that. Like, I feel a lot of single mothers, especially because they're playing both the roles and they don't have a choice to even stand up or talk to their partner because that situation, that equation doesn't exist. So in that space, when the mother is doing literally everything and they are feeling burnt out, and the core wound that I've seen them operate from is that they're doing so much but not receiving enough. So how to move past that wound of not receiving enough, even though they're putting in just about everything, and how to open up to receiving the good.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And you're right, because they're playing the double role. They are literally playing the role of being both the parents, unless there is co-parenting happening, which is happening more and more these days. Even when people get divorced, they are parenting the child, which is wonderful, I feel. But in cases where it isn't, and the woman is playing two roles, And I wouldn't even say two roles, it's multiple roles because you're taking care of the house. I think one very self-loving thing can be to financially empower yourself. One gap that I find with single parents, especially mothers, and I even see it in single dads, is that they hold the identity of being a single parent very strongly to their heart. So now, while that is a wonderful story, literally a success story of courage, whatever they must have gone through and how they got to this point, at some point, it can become a limiting identity. I know I'm saying something that might trigger some people, but as a single parent myself, I can vouch for this. If you're perceiving yourself through any lens which limits you, if I'm only perceiving myself as a woman, if I'm only perceiving myself as a man, if I'm only perceiving myself as a parent or a single parent, it can at some point limit you. And that is where I find that financially, a lot of single parents, especially single moms, tend to not work on their financial literacy, tend to think that they can afford to be in survival mode. You can also thrive. You don't have to just survive. You don't have to just make it. You can actually thrive. You can actually become a success story. You can become a success story in all kinds of terms. So I would say it is a very self-loving thing to financially empower yourself, because that is where you'll be able to exchange services. So instead of burning yourself out, if you have the resources, you will have somebody who you can pay and they can come and cook for you. You will have somebody who will take care of matters which you cannot take care of yourself. So being kind to yourself means evaluating what are the things I can outsource either to somebody in my support system or to somebody where I can exchange money for some services, or I can even barter some services. You can carpool, for example. You can actually have play dates. You can actually have a support group available to you, which takes over when you are hitting that point where you just can't do it anymore. Let's say you are going through some emotional stuff yourself, or you're going through some ups and downs, and your child needs to play. The child is being playful, the child is full of energy, and you don't have the energy. So is there somebody in your support system who could take over, even if it is for an hour or two? That itself can help you reset. So being kind to yourself is not about dumping your responsibilities, because nobody is actually able to do that. Instead, what happens to single parents is that they criticize themselves, saying, I'm too harsh on myself. That itself becomes a trap for them. So it's a cycle. Do you see that? And they're not able to break it. And Instagram and the online world tells them, let go, let go. Oh yes, if they let go, is somebody educating them on who will take over? So either build a support system, and I'll always say build a support system, whether these are your friends or your family or even people who are your tribe, like you say.
Yeah, and I think another core wound that develops in them is that I have to do everything by myself. I have to take care of everything. And when they allow support into their lives is when they can drop those guards and they can really start healing, taking care of themselves, taking out time for themselves. So that I feel is also so important, like you said, to be able to allow that support in and to build that support structure from ground up.
Yes, and that's truly the process of beginning to receive. Because I know how powerful this affirmation is, which Louis Hay used to say, and which most of us say as Helio Life teachers and teachers of love and transformation. It is to open arms wide and say, I'm open and receptive to all good. And that's a wonderful way to shift that pattern of thinking, which says, I'm the only one who has to do things. I was recently talking to somebody and she said, I want to expand, I want to move beyond survival, I want to do this, I want to do that. But, I only have that much energy. And we were talking about her affirmations. And suddenly it was like a download for me to hand it over to her. Like a courier, I had to deliver that affirmation to her. And I said, how about you affirming that you're open and receptive to all good? And she said, wow, that's wonderful. And I said, how about you saying, money is pouring in from expected and unexpected sources into my bank account? And it was like a ton of bricks fell on her head. And she said, I've just realized I was never open to unexpected sources. I've always had the thought process of I have to work hard to get it. I have to literally ghiz ke. I have to be in that survival energy. So I fully empathize with any person in this position because they are there because of a reason. This is not madness. It's not insanity. Somebody is in survival mode because the life that they led at a time, somewhere in the past, was in survival mode. Maybe the home was dysfunctional. Maybe the life with a partner was dysfunctional. So rightfully so, they were in survival mode because it was a question of survival. But that is over. That event is over. But it's not over here. It's not over here. We're still in the survival mode. So can you step out of it? And can you think of the most unexpected magic flowing into your life? And for you to thrive. And by thrive, I mean your version of what thrive is. You may want to have a home somewhere in the outskirts of a city, living a very simple life. And that's thriving too. Or you may want to check into the most luxurious vacations every year. And that's thriving too. So that again, the GPS has to be yours.
Wow. That is beautiful. The way you described how to move from survival mode to letting the magic flow into your life. And I want to talk a little bit more about this because survival mode has been something which has been my core wound as well for a long time, where you get stuck into that energy grid or template of just surviving and not being able to move to a space of thriving where things are happening for you, where automatically things are getting organized without you having to try a lot. And that brings us to also what we started with, the perfectionism, the doing too much part. And when you mentioned that you got to open up and allow abundance to come in, is there any other way or any other steps that we can follow to move from survival, doing a lot, to receiving with ease?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the very simple steps of know what you want first. Know what you want. So you set up your GPS first. And that time and again check very vigilantly that where is this coming from? Is this mine or is this somewhere downloaded from somebody, conditioned by somebody, right? So you decide with clarity what is it that you want. That itself is such a transformational step, Ashmita, because most of the times we think we know what we want. Most of the people know what they don't want. They don't know what they want. And when it comes to you knowing what you want, it can often be driven by the definition of your siblings, your friends, your family, your community, etc., etc. Any of the identities that you hold. So knowing what you want, I would say, is the first step. It's very important. And for that, you need to connect to yourself. You can't know what you want unless you have a relationship with you. Let's say I don't know you or I don't see you very frequently. You're a neighbor. I bump into you sometimes. I say, hi. Can I know what you truly want in life? No. But let's say I am here, you're my roommate, and I know you really well. And I've taken time to be with you, and we've done a lot of wonderful stuff together, and we've been through our ups and downs. I might actually know what you want. So you build that relationship, and that leads you to step one, which is knowing what you want, right? And second thing in shifting your ability to receive is to check, do I even believe I can receive this? Often, just to let you know, the answer will be no. A lot of people say, I want $1 million. If today I got $1 million and I stood outside their house, they'd be panicking. कि पता नहीं अब क्या हो जाएगा, मैं तो रात को सो ही नहीं पाऊंगी. Right? So we may believe that we are worthy of it. We may not believe we are worthy of it. And chances are we don't believe we are worthy of it. So building your belief system would be the second step. Releasing the old beliefs and building the new beliefs. It's pretty much like this soil. You want to grow some wonderful plants there. You need to first clear the soil, pick out the weed, right? Unblock everything that's there. Make sure the soil is nice and fertile. And then you begin to sow the seeds. So your belief system, one is the old belief system needs to be released, which doesn't serve you. And the new belief system needs to be set in. Pretty much like sowing the seeds, and then you nourish the belief system. While you do that, it will be wonderful if you can enjoy that process. Because when you enjoy that, just like you go to a restaurant, you place an order, and then you enjoy the surroundings, you enjoy the music, you don't get impatient and say, khana nahi aaya, khana nahi aaya. That ruins the whole experience. And if we are running up to the chef and saying, is it done? Is it done? Is it there for me? That's again going to ruin the experience. What do? We sit, we enjoy. And when you enjoy, what's happening is you're raising your vibration. When you are in the frequency of your new beliefs and you're in the frequency of joy, you begin to associate those beliefs with joy. So your subconscious mind starts accepting them much better, much easier, rather than you saying, I have to implement a new belief system and you're being harsh to yourself. Why am I still thinking this way? Why am I still believing my old beliefs? That process will lead you nowhere. And a lot of people are doing that. Instead, when we actually enjoy, we are becoming a vibrational match for everything that the source has. And then you can have all kinds of wonderful manifestations from that vibration. You're shifting your belief system and then you're receiving. And for receiving, you're making yourself ready to receive. Literally, if I want to manifest, for example, a car, then I start preparing, where am I going to park it? Right? What kind of music am I going to listen to? Or am I preparing for the opposite? There must be people who can afford these cars. We can't afford these cars. So if that is the language going on within us, that's not self-love. That's not nurturing ourselves. That's actually depleting yourself, lowering your self-worth. Yes, you may know that in your current reality, you may not have the money available. But the money is available somewhere in the universe. It's just a question of it coming into your reality. Having that belief, being open to receiving, even with body language. People who are open to receiving, you'll notice their body language is open. It's not guarded. You'll see very guarded body language with some people. So, physiologically also, if you want to start receiving, have your palms facing upward. Notice if your body language is open. That small shift can actually shift the way you feel and how open you are about receiving. And then, of course, affirmations are fabulous for building your belief system and getting ready to receive, being a vibrational match. So these are some of the very simple, practical ways in which a person can receive. Just 3 steps.
Amazing. I love this. Simply because it's something that I've been working on myself with as well. And I've literally seen the shifts and changes. So over the last few months, I have been working on, taking out that time for myself in the morning, meditating, going out for a walk, practicing gratitude, working on my affirmations. And I've also been really tuning into my inner voice and letting that be a source of validation. And that has led me to actually stop playing small and start moving towards my dream, my vision, because for the first time in my life, I'm seeing what I want. Otherwise, it was just all up in the air. And now I'm understanding, I'm experimenting, and some things are not working out. Those things that have not worked out tell me that this is not for me. And that's how I get to know myself more deeply. Then what has been working out tells me that this is what's meant for me. So I think the journey that you took us through today is something that I have been, I would say, someone who has worked upon it. And I have seen the changes in my life. And I would, like to tell everyone who's watching that follow this journey and let it lead you to a whole new space, a whole new version of yourself. And that will for sure open up as we follow, each and every step that was shared here today, because it was absolute gold. And really take it home and sit on it and, meditate upon it. And you will find that within these moments of what was shared here today, it will actually start transforming you. The small steps, it's very simple. We complicate it, right? We complicate self-love and being there for yourself so much. But today we learned that it's so simple. It's just taking out that little time with yourself and getting to know yourself and developing that relationship with yourself. So I feel that's beautiful. Our last question I want to ask you is, what are some of the resources that we can tap into to be able to begin our journey of self-love, or to, let's say, deepen our journey of self-love and elevate our self-worth?
So I'll share what has helped me and the hundreds of people that have already done these journeys with me. I think one resource that remains evergreen gold are books, right? Books can sometimes trigger something that, or open our hearts up to something that we didn't even know we needed. So there are some amazing books, and I can go on and on about it. But if I were to name a couple of, or maybe 2-3 books, I would definitely say You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. That is something that changed my view of myself, changed my view of the work that I wanted to do, and reset my GPS literally, right? The second book that I highly recommend all the time is a book called Atomic Habits, because we are a balance of being and doing, right? If we are only being, which means I'm meditating, I'm affirming, I'm visualizing, but I'm not taking any inspired action, then I'm not really trusting the source. Because why would I not take action? I would take action if I trusted somebody. So that inspired action and all our inner practices go hand in hand to manifest. That's the secret of manifestation. So Atomic Habits is one book that takes care of the doing part very, very well. And it works keeping the being part in mind. So it's a book I highly recommend. Another book that I would highly recommend is The Power of the Subconscious Mind. Because I think learning about the subconscious mind could actually be a part of school education. Because it's similar to how we learned about our various body parts. We needed to learn about our mind also. So that's a book I highly recommend, because it goes hand in hand with self-love, manifestation, mindfulness, all of that. There's also a lesser-known book called The Artist's Way, which is a beautiful experience in healing, in getting in touch with your creative energy. And by creative energy, I don't mean somebody who's a painter or necessarily embroiders things. It means having the ability to create. So the greatest artist in the world is the divine. When you look at a sunset or you look at the sky, you're left in awe, because how beautiful is this artist? And if we are part of the same energy, we're all born as artists. We're all born with creative energy. We can create out of thin air, literally. Right? So that book is a wonderful journey, not only in creativity, but also in healing the inner child. And it's a very loving journey to undertake. So that's a book I recommend. Also, a couple of books of Abraham. For example, Ask and It Is Given, The Law of Attraction. These are fundamental books to read to understand the basics of how energy works, right? So, of course, like I said, I can go on and on, but these are some of the books that I will highly recommend. Also, a lot of books on mindfulness, such as Radical Forgiveness, which is around radical forgiveness, Zero Limits, which is around the Ho'oponopono practice, and books by Eckhart also. I think they are wonderful. And we could all learn, for example, from The Power of Now. But of course, these are not, they are not exclusively about self-love. They are more about mindfulness.
And that's also very important, to be able to handle the emotion.
Oh, yes. And so, to answer your question, one would be books. The second thing that I would highly recommend, and this worked beautifully for me, is that I do something very simple, and I do it till today. From my budget, I actually allocate a certain amount every month, and I've created a fund for my learning and my own development. The fund is called Blossom. It's for my blossoming. And the money that I put into that fund, I invest it into workshops that call out to me. I invest it into resources that help me blossom. And these are things that I identify based on my GPS. So that's something I would highly recommend, that you make the space, you find the resources, invest in yourself, and give yourself the opportunity for the right mentor, for the right teacher, because initially we may require that. Sometimes many of us may require it because we need somebody to hold space for us. Some of us may need it because there's a note of trauma and we are not able to hold space for it.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody else may just need the accountability. So our reasons could be different, but it is wonderful. And those are the places where you will meet your tribe also. And that brings me to the third resource, which is about your tribe. Start opening your heart up. Don't lock yourself up in your homes. Go to the kind of locations. For example, here in Pune, we're blessed with some wonderful spaces, cafes and learning spaces, where I've met the most wonderful people, homeschoolers and unschoolers and people who are into alternate health and farmers, people who are highly educated who've taken to permaculture, all kinds of kindred spirits. So it doesn't just have to be somebody who's on the same line spiritually, but it could be somebody who's a kindred spirit, who's vibrationally there for you. So that could be a wonderful resource as well.
Wow, that is amazing. I think that's beautifully summed up. And with that, I want to ask you, do you have spots open where people can work with you one-on-one? Because I've had the privilege to do that and my life has changed since the time I met you. And I think I met you when I started on my spiritual awakening journey, and just meeting you was like, it just ticked off a horse. It was like a domino effect. So is there a way in which people can work with you?
So there are many levels, I feel, and that's intentional. I've always intended to have something for anybody who's a sincere seeker. So for example, my YouTube channel or my social media really helps somebody who is open to learning, but may not have the resources to invest in a paid workshop or in a paid one-on-one session with me, right? So for anybody to begin their journey, there are resources available. And then I'm also on the app called thinkrite.me, where I'm one of the meditation guides. And I have so many meditation journeys and episodes over there. So you can find me there also. Another way to work with me is to participate in some of the workshops that I hold. And I emphasize this because you live within a community, you live within a family, and that dynamic heals wonderfully within workshops. And therefore, I recommend to everybody that do workshops also. Don't just look for one-on-one work, because you're not an isolated human being. You function within the collective. And so for that reason, there have been people whose family dynamic has healed in the most magical ways because of a Heal Your Life workshop that they were attending. And that couldn't have been possible in a one-on-one interaction. And the last part, of course, is the one-on-one coaching sessions that I take up. Those are very exclusive now, purely because there is so much to offer and I would like many more lives to get impacted. So I do work with people, but people who are already ready. They know where they are, they know where they want to be, and I'm going to hold space. And I'm going to carry them forward hand in hand through the journey. And at the right time, I'm going to let them be. I'm going to take off the training wheels. So yes, I do work with people. It is, however, very few numbers. I don't work with huge numbers as far as the one-on-one coaching goes. And I think it is intentionally that way. So yes, I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. So we'll have all the details below to check out her social and a way to contact her as well.
And I'm Vidisha Kaushal everywhere. So it's not difficult. You'll find me.
So you can contact her. The details are below. You can reach out to her on social media, and her email ID is also below. So you can check that out to connect with her and to get to know more about her workshops. And yes, that's it. Thank you so much for being on this journey with me. And this was such a wonderful talk and so enlightening, at the same time so confirming of the journey that I have been on. I'm sure a lot of people who are starting on their journey of self-love or want to deepen their journey of self-love might have got a lot of deep insights and also a lot of myths busted, right? So that was so essential. Thank you so much for joining.
I want to thank you, Ashmita, for doing this. I think you're the voice of so many. And the very fact that you've had the courage to create this podcast can be a way to change lives. So congratulations. And I'm really grateful to you because you serve as an instrument of the divine. Just like I'm here for source to flow. So whatever conversation we've had is literally the source interacting with everybody who's listening today. In this shape and form, the source has come to share with you.
Magical. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.